let's go ahead and just jump into our agenda for today. And what I'd like to do to really help facilitate this process is I'm going to go and just give you guys kind of a quick overview of our demand gen framework, and then do a little bit of a deep dive on the second pillar. So if you scroll down on the agenda, you're going to see an infographic that's got 4 pillars to it. And I'm going to kind of hit the high level parts of that. And then what I'll do when I get to that second pillar is we'll talk about those different subtopics there, because that's what we're going to be covering in these 2 sessions. And so if we're looking at that infographic, when we think about going to market with digital, there's really 4 key pillars. The first pillar is planning. And so what we have to do before we do anything else is really understand, what does winning look like for us? What does winning look like for our customer? And really, what are the messages or the things that we can bring to the table that will help them accomplish their goals and objectives? And how does that ultimately translate into topics or messages or information that we want to share to them? And that all gets figured out in the planning phase. And then from there, if we want to get the attention of our audience, what we've got to do is what we call activate our audience. And by activating our audience, what we're talking about is really going into places where we know that our audience goes to learn things and learn about how to overcome challenges or how to accomplish things that they're trying to accomplish in business, and meet them there and become a part of that conversation. And so what we're going to do today is kind of go through each of these 4 subcategories, if you will, under that activate your audience pillar. So we're going to talk about search. You know, search is still a very important place where B2B buyers go to learn things. We're going to talk about social media and how can we leverage social media to connect and engage with our buyers. Then we're going to talk about influencers. There's several different types of influencers that we can leverage in our go-to-market. And basically, when we think about influencers, we're talking about who are those people that have the ear of our customer, and who are those go-to people that when our customer has a problem about something that we also are experts on, where are they going to get the answers to those questions? And so those are influencers, and we want to have a good strategy to get in front of them. And then finally, employee amplification. That's that last one there on that second pillar. And really, what can we do to activate our employees? What can we do to get our sales reps more engaged in social media or in telling our story? And so when we want to activate our audience and really get in front of our customers in places that aren't necessarily our website, these are the 4 key ones that we believe we need to pay attention to. And like I said, we'll spend the rest of today and our next session kind of breaking those down. But let me go ahead and move on through our go-to-market strategy here. So once we activate our audience, one of the key goals is to get them out of the channel or platform that they're in, and ultimately into or onto our website. What we're trying to do on our website and why we need them to come to our website is this is where we establish authority and empathy. And so one of the things we talk about at Vindy is, you know, activating your audience is like going out to a cocktail party or a networking event where you're going to go and meet people and share your thoughts and perspective. But ultimately, you're going to make some friends, and we want to invite those friends back to our house for a barbecue. And that's really that's what our website and our blog are all about. And that's where we can tell a deeper story and really establish authority. Yes, we're qualified to solve this problem for you, but also empathy. Not only are we qualified, but that we want to solve this problem for you. And then that last pillar is about really nurturing relationships. You know, we're B2B marketers here. We have to deal with sales by committee. We have to deal with long sales cycles. We can't control when that buyer is going to be ready to say yes. But what we can do is control that when they are ready to say yes, they think of us first over our competition. And so those are the 4 pillars. And when we think about go-to-market, digital go-to-market and demand generation, this is the lens by which we look at it. And let's go ahead and move on down into the agenda and just really talk about, you know, how are we going to activate our audience? How are we going to cut through the noise? And, you know, there's a few key points that I really wanted to try to make here. And one is that we've got to quit thinking about our website as the place where everybody's going to go and learn about us. In today's world, buyers have ubiquitous access to information, and so they're not needing to go to our website to get information about how to solve their problems. We have to go out there to where they're going today. Another way to think about that is, you know, just think about how much traffic does your website get on an average month? I'm sure all of us marketers, we probably know pretty much how much traffic our website's receiving. And when you compare that to like the 670 million plus visitors that are going to LinkedIn every single day, I promise you there's more activity and traffic happening on channels where we can activate our audience and on our website. So we really have to start thinking about how do we take our information, create channel appropriate bite-sized messages and get it out there where our audiences are going. Another example of that, just think about, I'm posting something on LinkedIn at least once a day during the business days, during the weekdays. And I can promise you that the impressions that my posts receive over the course of a month far outweigh the amount of traffic that our website's receiving. And so the key is we can't think about our website as the place where all that information is housed. We want to take our good stuff and we want to share it where our customers are. And so really just thinking about how can we take our best, most relevant content and getting it out there in the right format, right modality, right context for these different platforms that we're going to look at. So let's just think about for a second, I'm going to move down to the agenda of what is the goal, right? So if we're going to focus on activating our audience and, we're really going to try to go engage in these different channels and platforms that we're going to be covering in the next 2 sessions, what does winning look like for us? Like, how are we going to measure success? And I think there's 3 key goals that we should consider. The first one is generating awareness, right? So if we're going to go activate our audience, we're going to get our message in front of the right audience, then we're going to have to get people that don't know that we exist today to know that we exist. And so that's generating awareness. But then also we want to make sure that we're not only making ourselves aware to our buyer, but they understand our point of view on the problems that we can solve for them. So it's really important that we just don't get our brand out there, but we get our brand out there along with our point of view. So they understand and have context of how can we solve their problem? Hey, if you have this problem, we can solve it for you. An analogy I use all the time is we don't want to talk about the fact that we have aspirin. We want to talk about the fact that if you have a headache, we have a way of making it go away, and that happens to be aspirin. And so we want to get our point of view out there on how we can help people overcome their problems. And then finally, I've already kind of touched on this. The third goal in activating your audience that you can measure is really traffic to your website. So if you're doing a good job of activating your audience, what you want to do is see these different channels and platforms grow over time. And then ultimately, if you're driving the right traffic to your website and nurturing them well, your opportunities, marketing sourced opportunities are going to increase. And so those are the 3 goals. Let's grow our awareness, let's get our point of view out there, and let's drive traffic to our website. Moving on to the next agenda item, and then I'm going to pause after I get through this topic and take time for Andrea to tee up some questions if you've got them, is, really kind of taking a step back and thinking about the planning phase. Because if we're going to activate our audience, we've got to make sure that we're activating the right audience or we're telling the right story. And so it's really important that we understand who our customer is. We can't market to everybody. Marketing to everybody is like marketing to nobody. And so we really have to understand who is our ideal customer profile and really focus on how can we not be a tiny fish in a big pond, but a big fish in a small pond. And that really comes to understanding, even though I could sell to everybody, who is that subset of a particular market or industry or whatever the case may be, that I can really deliver some significant value to this ideal customer. And then once we understand that, then we need to understand what they're trying to accomplish. Why would we get the attention of a buyer in the first place? And we have to kind of take a walk in their shoes a little bit and understand that what they're trying to do is overcome challenges on their own. Right? They're trying to make decisions that aren't going to get them fired. They're trying to make decisions that are going to help their company perform better or optimize things that are going on within their business or reduce risk. Maybe there's something going on in their business that's creating lots of challenges, and they just need to figure out a way to make those challenges go away. Or on the positive side, maybe they're just looking for new opportunities, ways to grow their business or ways to grow their individual career. But we have to look at this. If we're going to get their attention, we got to talk about these things from their point of view and not our point of view. And so another thing to think about in terms of activating our audience, these are just kind of some tips here before we get into the different categories, is we don't want to be all over the place in the things that we talk about. And so when you figure out who your customer is and what they're trying to accomplish, try to break your subject matter expertise into 3 to 4 key pillar areas. Don't try to talk about everything that's in their world, but rather if you can hone down, what are the 3 or 4 things that we want to talk about and be consistent. And the reason for that is marketing is an exercise in memorization. So if we try to talk about too many things, then we're going to confuse our audience and they're not going to have that context that we're looking for on how we can solve their problem. But if we talk about 3 or 4 things consistently over and over again, then they're really going to get, oh, these guys have aspirin that can make my headache go away. And that's really important. Another thing to think about when we're trying to activate our audience are really that problems that our customer has. Now I'm talking about our buyer, not the company that we're trying to sell to, but that human being that's ultimately going to make that decision. Our buyers have different types of problems. They have the external problem, which is the problem that they're trying to solve for their company. Then they have an internal problem as it relates to that external problem. And that's, how is that frustrating them? How's that making them feel? How's that upsetting them? Or what is that internal emotion that's coming from this issue that they have, this external problem? And then there's also a philosophical problem. And that philosophical problem really is just why is it this hard? It shouldn't be this hard. Like if we were to take it from a Vendy digital point of view, the external problem that we help folks solve a lot is their pipeline. They're just not generating marketing source pipeline. They're not, they're trying to do a lot of things in marketing, but it's not translating easily, or they can't easily see it translate into source pipeline. And so that's the external problem. I need to do things that are going to cause my pipeline to go up, right? But that internal problem might be, man, I'm frustrated, or I'm frustrated that I don't have time to go figure this out. I'm frustrated that my team can't figure it out. I'm frustrated that I don't know what to do. That's an example of an internal problem. And then the philosophical problem might be, man, it shouldn't be this hard. Doing digital marketing should be easy. It shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't be hard to get in front of your buyer. It shouldn't be hard to give them a good message. It shouldn't be hard to grow your pipeline through digital. And so hopefully that makes sense. So when we're activating our audience, we have to talk about that external problem, the internal problem that they're feeling, and then that philosophical problem of why it shouldn't be that way. And then really the last thing that I wanted to talk about is, this kind of what I call work at hand. And that's kind of a common term right now, but what is that work that they're trying to accomplish? What are they trying to accomplish? How can we talk about the work at hand that if we were doing this for them, they would be able to accomplish that work more easily, more quickly, with less stress, all those things. And so when you're thinking about activating your audience, go back and eliminate anything that you're publishing out to the market in the channels that we're about to review that really are don't kind of fit in and line up with that, right? So if it's not lined up with your ICP, or if it's not clear who you're going after, or if it's not talking about the problems that you can solve, and it's not addressing, the work at hand or the content pillars that you've identified, you should really just eliminate that and focus on building great content and messaging around those things. And I think you'll have a lot more success. And so with that, Andrea, I'm going to tee it up for you. And I know I've covered a lot. And like I said, I'd come up for air every now and then. But Andrea, anything that's come out of the group, or any thoughts that you'd like to share?
Paul, we do have one question. Michael Brown had a question about repeating LinkedIn content. Michael, you can unmute yourself and ask if you'd like.
Sure, this is me, Michael.
Hey, Michael.
Hi, Paul. Paul, you do a great job. We follow you frequently, and I hope that you see that we like almost everything that you post. So thank you.
Keep it up. I appreciate that.
For us, I think a lot of it is about content. We are trying to be a thought leader, and we are concerned from time to time about the content and whether or not we have enough content over 6 months or a year to really inform our customers. We think that we do, but there are times where we feel that it's important to repeat something. So I'm just curious how often, and should we break it down into something that looks different than previously posted? What are your thoughts?
That's a great question, Michael. So, and that goes back to content pillars. And the thing is, if we're going to have, let's say, 3 to 4 content pillars, which are like topic areas that we want to talk about, like, for example, at Vindy, we talk about B2B social. We talk about, that's one of our pillars. We talk about demand generation or B2B strategy. That's another pillar. We talk about social selling. So those are pillars of content that we're going to talk about. And just like you can imagine, if we've only got 4 or 5 content pillars, we're going to be talking about those things a lot. And as a result of that, we are going to be repurposing and resharing content over and over again. And that's really important, though, because, you know, not everybody's going to see all of your content. And marketing is an exercise in memorization, as I mentioned earlier. So we want to constantly put our spin on it. Now, the thing that I will share that is very helpful when you've got these, you know, you're kind of putting yourself in this box of 3 to 4 or 5 content pillars. Well, how do I make that interesting to my customer? You know, I always talk about, well, develop a good point of view strategy. And so, and I'm going to give you kind of an outline for that. So the first thing is, you know, you can ask yourself or write about the answer to these questions. And the first one is, you know, what's broken, right? So you can take the different categories and think about their business. And in each one of those content pillars, ask yourself, what's broken in their business that I can talk about? So that's, you know, from my perspective, what's broken. The next question you can ask yourself is, you know, why is it happening? So this thing is broken in their business and it's happening because of this, right? So now you're taking one content pillar, you've got a couple of different spins on it. I'm going to tell you why it's broken. I'm going to tell you why it's happening. The third question you can ask is, if you were them, what would you do to fix it? Right. So now I've got another point of view, and that's kind of how-to content. And then the fourth question is always around, how can I prove it to them? What information can I share from case studies or success stories or other things that validate that how I would fix it really is going to fix it for them? And so, believe it or not, when you think about that and take your 4 or 5 content pillars and view it through those lenses, you can have plenty of content. The other part to this is, and I'm probably getting too far down, but if you've got a good content marketing strategy and you're writing blogs on a regular basis, which is something that we recommend, you saw that in our go-to-market framework there, that, you know, each section of your blog should obviously be informed by your content strategy and those content pillars. So each section of your blog theoretically could become a piece of social content or something that you might share in this activate your audience phase. So one blog could ultimately be multiple social media posts, for example. Does that make sense, Michael? Awesome. Great question, by the way. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Andrea, anything else that popped up?
Not at the moment. Just as a reminder, if you have a question, just drop it in the chat and we'll work it in. But just with that conversation, Paul, just reminds me that we talk a lot about establishing trust with our audience and how important that is through our content.
Yeah, you know, that's a great point, Andrea. So when you think about everything, and we're about to jump into the individual categories, but what is it that we're really trying to do? We're trying to establish trust with our audience. And, you know, it starts with our audience doesn't even know we exist. So we've got to create that awareness, but then all of this information that we're trying to present to them is creating this opportunity for them to go, you know what? I kind of believe Michael's point of view. I kind of think his view of how to solve this problem, or why I'm living with this problem, or what tomorrow might look like if I solve this problem. I kind of trust that he's right, or that this brand is right. And so building trust is a huge part of it. And if we're talking about too many things, or we're all over the place, or our audience is too broad, it's really hard to establish that trust. So that was a great point, Andrea. Thanks for sharing that.
We do have one more question, Paul.
Great.
Jess, if you want to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I know that we have some industry best practices just as marketers for blogging and getting our content out there, but do you feel like it varies by industry, even in B2B? Do you think that what would you recommend for pushing out blogs?
Yeah, Jess, that's a great question. So, and I'm glad you teed that up right before we went into these different categories, because the thing is, I'm going to cover, these four big ones, but every industry is different, right? Some people are going to have more success on Twitter than they are on LinkedIn or with influencers, because there's a big influencer community out there than others. And so a key part of the planning phase is when you identify your ICP, your ideal customer profile, the next thing you really have to ask yourself is, where are they going to learn about how to overcome these problems? And that really becomes your distribution strategy. I need to spend time in these watering holes that they're going to learn about how to overcome their problems. And that kind of goes right back just to what I said at the top of this session. And that is, we can't really expect people to come to our website. I mean, yes, our website is the place where we establish authority and trust, and we have our long form content, but we've got to take that content and go to them. I mean, that's the key. And we've got to go where they're hanging out. And sometimes that means being there organically, and sometimes that means we got to pay for their attention. But I'm telling you, even paying for their attention, if it's in the right place in the right format, is a great way to make all of this stuff work. So thanks for asking that question. Okay, so I'm going to jump on down to the next item on the agenda, which is our first really subcategory of how do we activate our audience, and that's search engines. And it's really important that we have a search engine strategy today, a search engine marketing strategy that is, where we're thinking about organic and we're thinking about paid. And the key point here, before we go into either one of those categories, is just understanding, if you're trying to think about this from a 50,000 foot view, how do I leverage search? The thing I'm always trying to recommend to clients is the key is aligning the content that you have on your website with the intent of the customer. And so, if the customer is looking for knowledge and learning, if they're in that early cycle, I'm trying to learn how to solve a problem mode, then what we want to do is focus on content like our blogs or useful information. But if they're in intent mode, meaning I'm looking for a vendor to solve this problem for me, then we want to drive them to landing pages and things that are going to be very optimized and tuned for conversion rates. And so it's important that you think about those, because I run across this all the time where a client's trying to do too many things on a landing page, or they don't have a landing page for their bottom of the funnel type keywords, and that just doesn't work well. And so one thing that we found, and I'm really interested if you guys have thoughts or differing opinions, but at Vindy Digital, we really believe for top of the funnel, your best use of effort as it relates to search engines is really from an SEO perspective, where you're focused on establishing trust and authority, and you're optimizing your website so that when people are doing what we call long tail terms or searching for specific problems that they're trying to overcome, that our website is showing up naturally in organic search, that's really the best opportunity. You may be not aware of this, but only about 3 to 4% of the people that do searches on sites like Google actually click on ads. Most of them are clicking on, when they do click, they click on things below the ads. And so you need to have an organic SEO strategy so that for those long tail terms, you're going to show up. And there's really 3 key areas that you need to think about from an organic SEO perspective. It's not just adding meta tags or metadata to your website anymore. It hasn't been that in a long time. You've got to make sure that you've got good site architecture, which means that your site is easily crawlable by Google. They can get to all the pages in your site easily. They can understand what your site's about. It loads fast. You've got to make sure you've got good site architecture if you're going to get good rankings. You also want to make sure that you're doing best practices as it relates to on-page SEO. One thing I forgot to mention at the top of the session today is I've got a lot of great resources linked off of today's agenda, and there's an SEO resource that's at the bottom of this section. You guys can see that there. So it'll give you some ideas on what are some things you need to do on page to really maximize the search engine friendliness of your content. Another big one that I'm still amazed I run into this a lot is making sure that you've got key phrases in your URL. So if you've got a page about aspirin, you need to make sure that aspirin, if that's the key phrase you're going after, is in that URL, and that's going to help a lot. And then finally, just linking. So linking from content that you have within your website, linking externally to authority sites, but also making sure that you've got inbound links coming to you from sites that Google respects. And so those are all really important things to think about from if we're going to try to activate our audience with organic. And when you're thinking about the right types of keywords to focus on, the words that work really well at top of the funnel are going to be words that have like how to or guides or examples or best practices or tips or what. So those are the types of key phrases you want to optimize for in that top of the funnel that are gonna help a lot. Now, I do have a great resource linked off here, which is a free tool for Chrome. It's called Keywords Everywhere, and I really like it because you can just type in a key phrase in a Google search result, and it will actually give you. In fact, you know what? I may share my screen so you guys can see how this works. So over here, you're going to see. I just did a search in Google for demand generation right here. And what I love about Keywords Everywhere, this little side panel is coming up from Keywords Everywhere. So it's a plugin. So I can actually click here and find long tail terms for demand generation. So it's going to literally, and this is all free, give me really expand out the list for me. I can also just see various pieces of information that they make available for you here, like related keywords, also search for keywords. And so, if you're trying to do this internally, Keywords Everywhere, it's again a free tool, might be something that you want to check out. And I've got a link to that in the agenda there for you. So give that a try, and that'll help you kind of expand out your keywords. Just continuing to talk about organic and SEO, other things that help really well are having content hubs. And a content hub and a hub and spoke strategy just means understanding the interrelation between the content on your website and making sure that related pages are interlinked with one another. And that works extremely well. And then finally, just having frequently asked questions and glossaries on your website are other really good, powerful ways to have your website show up for those long tail top of the funnel key phrases. The key point here is we're talking about search is I'm not a fan of buying long tail terms with Google paid advertising. I'm a much bigger fan of having a content marketing strategy where you're focusing on these long tail terms. And I think you're going to be much better off. At Vendy, 60% of our traffic comes through Google or search, and about 45% of that comes through our blogs. So it's our blogs that are ranking well because we create topics around keywords that matter to our customers. We show up, and then the traffic comes to our website. So that really covers kind of activating our audience top of the funnel, moving down to paid, which is the next part we need to think about. Our goal here really is capturing demand. So if we think about organic, our goal was, establishing trust and authority. Now what we need to do is take that buyer that's actively looking for help and make sure that we're focusing on words that really center around what you do. So for example, we're not at Vendy Digital, we're not currently buying any pay-per-click or paid ads for ourselves in search. But if we were, we would focus on words like B2B Demand Gen Agency or B2B Digital Marketing Agency or B2B LinkedIn Ads Agency or something like that. And so hopefully you understand and can see the difference that when we're running paid campaigns, we really want to focus on in-market customers that are looking for a specific thing that we do. And then we want to drive them over to our website. Other key phrases that might align with that would be things where maybe they're typing in the word best or reviews or, comparison or pricing as it relates to those terms. Again, that keywords everywhere tool that I just walked you through would be a great way to try to find those kind of in market, what you do kind of words to help with that. The other thing about paid is it's critical that you use landing pages. So the way that paid search ads work is you're buying a set of terms, and those terms, believe it or not, Google actually analyzes how related are those terms to the place that you're going to send that visitor after they click on your ad. And if those terms are not highly related to that landing page, then you're going to have what's called a low quality score, and you'll end up either not getting much traffic at all or paying way too much for traffic. So if you're going to go after a paid search strategy, you have to have you've got to break your keywords up into categories that become campaigns, and then those campaigns get tied ultimately to a landing page. And that's going to give you the ultimate flexibility. But again, wouldn't focus on top of the funnel keywords with paid search. That's where SEO is going to come into play. Only focus on those bottom of the funnel keywords that show high intent. And in both cases, though, we want to optimize for click-through rates. So Google actually looks at how often your website shows up organically for a term, and then how often people actually click on your listing. And so it's even important that in your title tags and the things that Google is using to show your listing on the organic side of the search result page, that you've got call to action in that title and description to try to maximize your click-through rate, because that's going to help you from an organic SEO perspective. But also your click-through rate on your ads is going to matter to them too. So, when you're bidding for position, if you will, if you've got a better click-through rate than your competition, that might help you rank higher than your competition, even on paid words. And so those are some of the key things when we're thinking about activating our audience and getting in front of them through paid. I've got these resources here that I mentioned to you. So there's a blog that we've written. There's a content hub example that you can see there, keywords everywhere. And then Backlinko, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but great resource and a great article that they wrote earlier this year on just B2B SEO. So hopefully that'll help you guys out. And I'm going to come up for air again, Andrea, before we move into the next topic. Curious if this is a hot topic for you guys. Is there anything about SEO or paid search that we haven't covered, or any clarifying questions that you guys might have?
Yeah, Paul, we do have one question. I'll just read this one aloud. The question is, if someone has a super small team, how do you prioritize SEO or paid? Great
question. So, SEO is one of those things where I try to tell people, don't think of it as a project, but think of it as a process. And so SEO, and I know I'm going to get to the idea of a small team, but really SEO needs to be baked into everything that you do. So from the content and topics that you create, to the blogs that you write, to the way that you interlink those blogs. And if you've got a best practice baked in and you're already doing content marketing, you're knocking out like 80% of the SEO challenges that you might need as a business. So it is something that you can manage internally. I do recommend, though, to use, if you're going to do this in-house, I didn't put this as a resource, but there's some great auditing tools out there. SEMrush is an auditing tool. Ahrefs is an auditing tool. You guys can look those up in Google, but they'll give you the ability to plug in your website and actually get a report back on things that need to get fixed, that then you can have your webmaster or folks work with. You can always work with an agency too that can help you with some of these things. So it really just depends on the skill set that your team has. From a prioritization perspective, it really just comes down to, if I had super limited resources, I would focus on top of the funnel, content marketing and SEO. I think that's where you're going to get the most bang for your effort. But great question, Jess. Thanks. Anything else, Andrea?
That's all we got in the queue, Paul.
Okay, well, let's move on down the road then. So the next category that we're going to talk about, and this is probably the last one that we'll get through because I'm looking at the clock and it's already 15 minutes till the hour. And one thing we promise for those of you that haven't been here before is that we are going to be good stewards of your time. We're going to stop at the top of the hour no matter what. So the next one is social media. So how do we leverage social media as a way to get the attention of our buyer and get them to pay attention to us? And as you're looking at the agenda here, there's really kind of two things we need to think about. What are we doing at the top of the funnel? And then what are we going to do at mid and bottom of the funnel to get the message out there? And so when we're thinking about top of the funnel social media, the thing you really want to think about in building out your content strategy, and again, we've talked about content pillars and things like that already, but this is what at the top of the funnel, what is it that we want them to know? That's the question that's really important in terms of what kind of information should we share with our audience in social at the top of the funnel. What is it that we want? That it goes back to what Michael, you and I were talking about earlier, but what's our point of view on what's broken and why it's happening and how would you fix it? Those are some things that you might want them to know. What is information about maybe features that you have as it relates to your product or service that are incredibly unique for your ideal customer profile that they might want to be aware of? Are there customers that you have that would love to tell your story that you would like to also get out there through social media? So when you're thinking about, okay, how do I get in front of this audience that doesn't know that I exist? Just think about that question. What is it that I want them to know? And then build a strategy out that answers that question. Now, I'm a big fan, especially on LinkedIn, of paying for this attention. So, the thing about LinkedIn and our company pages on LinkedIn, when you post something on your company page, hardly anybody's going to see it. That's probably why when you post something on LinkedIn, the only people that you're seeing like or comment on your stuff most of the time are employees. And so what we want to do is get that information out in front of our targeted customers. The great thing about LinkedIn, though, is that's some of the most accurate first-party data out there about our buyers. So if we've got, an industry that we're trying to target, or a size of business that we're trying to target, or a role within a company that we're trying to target, whatever the case may be, we can guarantee that user or that customer is going to see our information. And it's definitely worth the investment to get that attention and to communicate how we can help them. And then when you think about the kind of information that you want to share, obviously we want to answer the question, what is it that we want them to know? But we want to give it to them in multiple formats. So maybe it's an infographic, maybe it's a testimonial, maybe it's a video. And what you want to do is mix that up so that you're learning really from your audience what kind of information is going to resonate with them the most. In fact, when we're working with clients and we're helping them build out a social media strategy, we'll help them answer that question. What is it that they want their audience to know? And then we'll come up with the answers. And then we create multiple variations of the way that we want to tell that answer to the audience. It might be a long form post, or it might be a really short post with a link to their website. We test all those different formats to see what's really going to hit. When you're thinking about this top of the funnel and you're thinking about the type of information to share, another thing that we recommend is about half of the content that you produce, try to deliver the entire message in the feed, which basically means if they just consumed that post that they saw, they would get the point that you're trying to make, and they would receive value by consuming that post and not having to go to your website. And about half of the content that you produce, you want to drive people to your website to get the full story. So maybe you're teasing the idea or the concept, but then they've got to click the link and go to your website to get the whole story. The reason for that, if you remember, one of our goals in activating our audience is to get people over to our website eventually. So that's why we say mix it up, 50% in feed, 50% designed to really drive traffic. And then just one last thing about top of the funnel here from a social media perspective is, it's not just targeting your audience based on when you're running ads, just based on what you're trying to reach. You can also upload into LinkedIn a CRM list, an ABM list. There's lots of ways that you can run targeting campaigns in LinkedIn. We don't have a lot of time to go through that today. I did link in the resource section for you a webinar that we did last month, I guess 2 months ago now, back in May, that just walks through our go-to-market approach for social media and B2B. So be sure to check that out. We go into a lot more detail there. So let's just move on to middle of the funnel. And, at top of the funnel, I said, we need to answer the question, what do you want them to know? In the middle of the funnel, the question that we need to answer is, what do we want them to do? And so in middle of the funnel, ask ourselves that question. Do we want them to come to an event? Do we want them to come to our website and sign up for a demo? What are the things we want them to do? And then we build our content really around that. Now, just like on top of the funnel where I said 50% of your traffic is focused on consuming the content in feed and 50% drives traffic to your website, we have a 50-50 equation here too, but it's a little bit different. It's 50% content and 50% offers. So when you're focusing on middle of the funnel, you don't want everything to be offer, 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 offer. That's going to turn off your audience. So take some of the content that you're running in middle of the funnel and make sure that it's just useful, helpful information. And then half of it is some kind of an offer, answering that question, what is it that you want them to do? Now for middle of the funnel, man, this is where retargeting is king. And so not a lot of people are aware, but you can run retargeting campaigns in just about any channel, and it doesn't matter where they came from. Like they could have come to your website from Google and you can retarget them on LinkedIn, or they could have come to your website on Twitter and you can retarget them on LinkedIn or wherever you want to retarget them. So retargeting is powerful, but it's not a channel centric thing. And so, one thing that we love to do is drive traffic to sites or to our site and then overlay that retargeting layer so that when they're back on LinkedIn, if they fit our ICP profile, that we're going to show them that mid-funnel message. That's another thing that I absolutely love about LinkedIn for retargeting is, they could come to your website, through organic search and you don't know if they're the right fit for your company. But when they come to LinkedIn, if you want to retarget them, you just add that targeting overlay. So only people that are, meeting your ICP profile are the ones that are going to see that mid-funnel ad. One other thing I just wanted to share as it relates to just advertising in social. I've talked a lot about LinkedIn, but man, we're liking Twitter right now. Twitter's a great way to drive qualified traffic to your website with messages. You can target on Twitter with hashtags. You can target on Twitter with key phrases. So give that a try. And then believe it or not, a good retargeting channel, which would be mid-funnel, is Facebook and Instagram. I definitely wouldn't do anything top of the funnel on Facebook and Instagram for most B2Bs, but man, it's a good place for retargeting and very cost-effective place to do that. The last point I'll make on social, and then I'll open it up for questions, and then we'll need to wrap probably, is, we need to repurpose our content. So Michael and I kind of talked about this with Michael's question earlier, but we're not talking about reinventing the wheel with all these things. We're talking about having a good, rock solid content strategy that drives our long form content, i.e. blogs or videos or things like that, that content can get sliced up into channel appropriate bite-sized chunks. And then those become the things that we want to promote out in these different channels. And that's super true in social media because we can pay for that attention and we want to make sure that that content is bite-sized. I'll give you an example. Like we're going to take we took the content from our webinar that we did back in May on social media that I've got a link to there, and we sliced that up. We pre-purposed it. We knew exactly what sections were going to get sliced up. And then that stuff's running on social media right now as a top of the funnel brand awareness play for us. So definitely you can make this easy on yourself if you think about pre-purposing and repurposing your content for top and middle of the funnel. So, okay, that was kind of my crash course on social media. Again, there's a link to our webinar that we did back in May. Check that out if you want to learn more. And Andrea, I'm going to pass it back over to you. Any questions or comments around B2B social?
No questions in the queue, Paul, but something that we get asked a lot are, what are the best ways to show that social is working?
What? You mean doing social media, you got to be able to show your boss that it's actually paying off? Yeah, that's a big one, isn't it, Andrea? Yeah. The reality is the only way, if you're going to do social and spend money on social, and to do the things that we've talked about today, you've got to take a blended approach because and what I mean by blended approach is you've got to engage in various tactics over an extended period of time and look at the outcomes that you're trying to achieve. So are your leads going up? Are your opportunities going up? Is your cost per lead or cost per opportunity going down? It's wrong to get myopic when you're spending money on social and, like, for example, taking your top of the funnel strategy and maybe you're spending $3,000 a month on that. And I'm just making that number up. Though that traffic's not going to generate leads. That's not the intention. The intention is to create awareness, and that's going to make your middle of the funnel perform better. And so, if you go and run a top of the funnel only campaign for 30 days and then want to know, and your boss wants to know where are the leads, you're thinking about it the wrong way. You've got to look at it from a blended perspective. So hopefully that helps. All right, I'm going to give you guys one last shot at answering any questions here or teeing up any questions. It looks like maybe we've got everybody covered. So just a reminder, we've got in the top of the agenda, we have a link to the Demand Gen Jammers group on LinkedIn. Please go join the group. That's where we're going to keep the conversation going in between the sessions. And also, please plan on joining us in August the 10th. We'll finish up this agenda and we'll talk about influencers. I'm really excited to walk you through some really cool ways to piggyback on key influencers in your space and to get awareness of your audience through that. And then leveraging employees as a way to help get your message out there. I think it'll be some good topics to have. And I certainly appreciate everybody's time. You guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you on LinkedIn soon. Take care, everybody.